Welcome to the GMAT Strategy Podcast. You're here because you believe there's a better way to study for the GMAT, and so do we. We created the GMAT strategy to maximize your results and minimize your effort so you can get to the fun parts about business school and life as quickly as possible. My name is Isaac Puglia, and I've been teaching GMAT classes and tutoring privately for the GMAT for almost a decade, and I've achieved a 99th percentile score on the GMAT and helped thousands of students get into the business schools of their choice. I'm excited to be a part of your MBA journey since we all at TGS think our world can benefit from the best possible business leaders that we can find. If this show is bringing you value, please share it with your friends and family who are studying so that together we can make this process as easy and as painless as it can possibly be. Let's go. Welcome to part 3 of how to study smarter, harder, and longer. Today, let's talk exactly about what it means to work long hours and how you can improve at this skill if you want to. What is working long? Working long is putting in many smart hours each working day. The ability to work many smart hours on a regular basis is a skill set that gives you a tremendous amount of ability to produce great results quickly, which is probably one of the most valuable skill sets that there is. Perhaps obviously, knowing how to work smart, which we defined as doing the right things at the right time in the right way, is essential for being able to do this. So that's why we led off with how to work smarter. Because without that, working hard and working long on the wrong things in the wrong way could actually hurt your success. Once you understand how to invest smart hours, putting in many of these every single day often requires working hard, which we defined as working past the point that it feels good to work. And so that's part of the reason we covered how to work and study harder in part 2. It might seem like the natural product of working smarter and harder is working longer, and that is often true. But what I want to do today is give you a few additional skills that will take your ability to work many smart hours every working day to the next level. I've mentioned this multiple times now in this series, but I'll just say it one more time. I'm not here to tell you that you need to do any of this to be successful or even to get a great GMAT score. It's just a skill set I've found super valuable that can help you get results faster and at a higher level if that's what you want. You might be so talented that you don't need to do any of this, and that's awesome if that is the case. That is not most of us. It's definitely not me. So for those of you who feel you can benefit from understanding how to work smarter, harder, and longer, this is for you. As usual, none of this is medical, psychiatric, or professional advice of any kind. This is just what I've seen work best for the largest number of people whom I've worked with over many, many years. Let's begin. Once you know how to work smarter and harder, the first step in working longer is improving at time management. The first part of being good at time management is being crystal clear on your personal priorities. And just to be clear, that goes beyond just what to work on, which we already covered how to do in How to Work Smarter, part 1 of this series. So let's dive a little bit deeper on what I mean by personal priorities. Point 1, I recommend that you have a clear, easy to reference list of priorities at this moment. For example, is your personal health or the health of your family more important right now? Is GMAT or hanging out with certain friends when they're available more important right now? There's no judgment here, and you don't have to share these publicly. I just recommend creating clarity for yourself so that when priorities conflict, you know what's more important to you and how to make good timing decisions, or the best timing decisions that you can. You definitely don't need to be perfect with any of this. The idea is if you make a mistake or things change, you just update the list. It takes a few seconds and it can save you hours of time being invested in the wrong things. If you're not sure exactly what I mean by priorities, priorities are just a list of responsibilities in order of importance. So it's things you're responsible for and you're ranking them in order of importance. It can be a rough ranking. And perhaps, obviously, there'll be exceptions from time to time. Sometimes the health of your loved ones is more important than your personal health. Sometimes your personal health is more important than the health of your loved ones. Obviously, that's a super extreme example. It's probably way too debatable. Let's choose something simpler like certain friends versus GMAT studying. At certain times of the week or the month, it might be time to hang out with your people. At certain times of the week or month, GMAT might take the priority. The idea is to create clarity for yourself around that so that it's not just a jumble of things in your head that sort of gets acted upon, if that makes sense. So think about an even more basic example. If showing up at work on time is more important to you than sleeping in, you'll avoid sleeping in when it conflicts with showing up at work on time. That's a priority. If you're not sure where to begin with this, just list out all your responsibilities right now. Things like earning money, maintaining relationships, chores, personal downtime, that kind of thing. Then put them in relative order of importance. Again, just a rough order is okay. It doesn't have to be a perfect list. There will probably be case by case exceptions, like I mentioned. And the key is to think about it and have more clarity than not thinking about it at all. You don't need perfect clarity, but you definitely don't want to be the person who's not considering your priorities at all, or just not considering them enough, if that makes sense. It's kind of weird. A lot of people never generate a list like this, and that makes it more difficult to make good decisions about investing your time. Maybe that's obvious, but I think it's worth saying. Many people simply invest their time in what seems the most urgent right now. But as you've probably seen in the workplace and in your personal life, that's not always the optimal approach. So just giving some thought to your priorities and writing them down can go a long way toward helping you become a better decision maker and a better investor of your time. More on this in a moment. What I'd recommend actually is just pressing pause on this episode. Just put a note on your phone, or if you're on the go, just make a quick mental list of like your top 5 priorities, and then set a reminder to write this down at a later date. Again, you just want to have something written, even if it's in a very crude way, and something that's updatable over time, because your priorities are probably going to shift day to day, maybe even hour to hour. So that's the first part of improving at time management. The second part of improving at managing your time is knowing your personal goals, which is a little bit different than your personal priorities. So I recommend you have a clear, easy to reference record of your goals. Very similar list to what I was just talking about with your priorities. I'll share what I think works well, but really anything that resonates with you is probably going to be okay here. What I've seen work best is just having having very few but relatively clear 1-year goals, 3, 5, and 10-year goals. Past 5 years, it's pretty tough for most people to predict exactly what life's going to look like. Past 10, it gets even harder, but I still find having those like 10-ish year goals can be really valuable as just an exercise to help you think a little bit bigger. Some of you might be familiar with the quote that small thinking is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we all have different definitions of thinking small and thinking big, but just you want to think long term for your personal goals. I don't want to put any like value judgment on this. This is really about you, not about what anybody else thinks you should be doing or should be going for. So while I recommend having very few but relatively clear 1, 3, 5, and 10-year goals, the exact format and the exact time horizon is actually not important. What matters is that your list of goals makes sense to you and is compelling to you personally. If you're not sure how I'm defining goals, goals are just things you're willing to work to achieve. If you think about it and you're willing to work to have it, that's a goal. Like priorities, it's okay for these things to change every day or, like I said, every hour if needed. You just want this list to be something you can look at clearly and say, yes, that's what I want. If that happened, that would be awesome. You don't need perfect clarity on your goals right now. You don't need to know what your address is going to be 3 years from now. You just want to know approximately what you do want, and you probably want something, otherwise you wouldn't be here right now. And you want to just codify it. You just want to have it written down to help you make better timing decisions. If it helps, you can split this into physical goals like health or fitness or body goals, relationship goals, how you want to feel or the types of relationships you want to have, home goals, meaning like where you spend your non-work time, or maybe there's a blend there, and then career goals for where you spend your non-personal time. Obviously, it's an artificial binary there, and A lot of people are into the like no blend between personal, or sorry, no boundary between personal and career. Again, it's just a helpful framework that I've found helps a lot of people get overwhelmed by like, oh my gosh, what are my goals? I don't even know where to start. Just start with health, relationships, home, and career. If you don't need that kind of framework, that's okay. If you already know what your goals are, if they're already written down, awesome. So the idea is just get some inspiration and avoid being overwhelmed by the thinking 10 years from now, what do you want? Okay, once you've got this list of goals and a separate list of priorities, even if it's super rough and super rudimentary, like just top three, which is totally fine to start, you can start improving at making that list. And you can iterate over time. And maybe even more importantly, you can start to improve at saying no to things that don't align with your goals and priorities. What this does when you get good at saying no to things that don't align with your goals and priorities is it creates more time and energy to invest in what does actually matter to you personally and what does align with your priorities and goals. That's the foundation of working long hours. It's going to be really tough to work long hours on things that don't align with your goals and priorities. Like it's going to feel a little off, and it's going to feel irrational because it is. If you do the rational analysis, it makes sense to invest more time in the things that are most aligned with what you want. However, when your work does align with your goals and priorities, working many smart and hard hours even can actually be super enjoyable. Now, I mentioned this before, you don't have to love this, but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt if you do enjoy the time that you spend on these things. Okay, so part of the way you can make the time to work long hours, because most of us don't just have the time that's already there to work long hours. Some of you do, and if you do, that's a big advantage. But many of us don't have that time naturally. There's too much pressure on our time. We have to create that time. And the way you create time to work long hours on the things that are important to you is you say no to things that are less important. Doesn't mean you're saying no to it forever. Doesn't mean you're even saying no to it beyond the next day or beyond the next hour. You're just saying no right now. And then you can always use some of the other tools I'm going to give you later in this lesson to reorient the time that you can spend on those things that might just not be the priority in this particular moment. It doesn't mean you're saying no to it forever or that it's like a sacrifice. You're just being intentional about how you're spending your time. Okay, so quick recap. The first step in working long hours is being clear on your priorities and goals. So if you haven't made those lists yet, I recommend pausing. Even if those lists aren't great, if you already made the priority list, just make a quick goal list, just one 1-year goal, one singular 3-year goal, one singular 5-year goal. Start with that. Things that you'd be willing to work for. Just pause, think about it if you're on the go, make a note to write it down later, or if you have the capacity to write it down right now, highly recommend that. You can always iterate on it whenever you have some new inspiration or new clarity. Just start. Starting is the key here. Again, once you have that list, you can start updating it on a regular basis and make it more useful over time. But without at least some level of clarity on priorities and goals, it's really easy to just invest time into things that aren't that meaningful to you, which means it'll be harder to work long on the things that are meaningful for you. As simple as that exercise and time management system is, it is equally powerful. Once you know what's more and less important to you, managing your time will get much easier and much more effective, and working long on important things will become a skill that you can leverage whenever you want to. Again, you don't have to do any of this stuff, but when you want to be able to deploy these skills, I think you'll find them very useful, and it's great to have some practice. Now, once you've got your list, let's work on the next aspect of working long hours. The next aspect that'll help you work long hours well, or help you work longer hours if you're feeling like there is a next level for your working potential, is just using your calendar effectively. Again, it's crazy simple. I'm just going to give a couple principles here. But I think if you take action on them, you will find them just as high leverage as I have. So working long hours is much, much easier when literally everything you do has a spot in your calendar. I know plenty of you probably have amazing calendar systems already. All I'm going to do is ask you if there's a way that you can improve that system. That's what I want you to ask yourself. Is there any way you can improve it, even just 0.01%? If it's impossible to improve, that's amazing. If there's anything you can do to improve it, though, I think you'll find the compounding benefits over time to be more than worth the adjustment. Let me share a super simple and super powerful principle that I recommend for the calendar, and this should transcend any like specific calendar system that you personally use. At the minimum, work, study, and personal time should be scheduled in your calendar with clear start and end points for each task. Again, many of you might have this in your calendar already. Just ask yourself, could you improve on how you're doing this? For those of you with unpredictable schedules like roles in banking or consulting, this doesn't mean that you don't move things around, but you don't just delete blocks or just like stop using the calendar, if that makes sense. It's got to be made up somewhere or you're going to fall behind in the important commitments. And it might be hard, but you can definitely do it. You know the surge will end at some point. I know the surge will end at some point, even if the surge has been coming and coming and coming for a long time. Just be ready when it does end with a plan to fulfill on your other commitments to the same degree that you would have if you did not get interrupted by the surge in the first place. So just because it's on the calendar doesn't mean it's absolutely non-negotiable today, but the amount of time that you committed to should be non-negotiable eventually. In my experience, this is as important for personal commitments as it is for work commitments. What happens if I don't water my garden? Or what happens if I don't spend time with people who are really important to me? Those things will probably not flourish. It doesn't mean you need to be perfect. None of this is about perfection. If you're going super hard, you're probably not going to be the person who's home at 5 p.m. for dinner every night, and that's completely fine. I'm not that person. Everyone around me knows and understands that. But they also know that I'm not going to tell them X and do Y. They know that when I say I'll be there, there is a 99.99999% chance I'm going to be there. Short of illness or death in the family, it's happening. Now, like I said, I'm not perfect, but I'm good enough that people can rely on my time commitments, myself included. And this is important, but for the purposes of studying and achieving your personal goals, what is especially important is that you know you will fulfill on what you put in the calendar. It's obviously important that other people can trust your time commitments to the extent that it's possible to give them. But for this process, which is for most of you a personal goal, like there's actually not a ton of external pressure on you to get an MBA in most situations. Sometimes, yes. But most of the pressure that we feel to do this process is internal. It's more about how we want to feel in our relationships to ourselves and the kinds of relationships we want to create in our life. And this calendar system, as hokey or dumb as it might sound, or as simplistic as it might sound, if you commit to it, it will make a massive, massive difference. It should. Let me be accurate with my language. It should make a massive, massive difference. I don't know your exact situation. I'm not going to claim to know it. Okay, so again, I'm going to state some obvious things here, but maybe just think I'm reminding you of this, even though you're probably already aware of it, and just inviting you to take some space and some time right now to maybe renew on some of these things that maybe got swept away by the many distractions that we virtually all face on a regular basis these days. So even making fewer commitments that you know you can keep, or smaller commitments that you know you can keep, is worth a lot more than empty commitments that are not kept. If you miss a commitment, find a way to make it up at another time. If you don't have a record of these things, such as a clear start and end time in your calendar, even if it gets moved to another day or another time, it's likely that you'll miss commitments, not make them up, and you may lose key relationships and key opportunities. I certainly did before I really committed to this and really worked on improving it. That's just one reason to keep everything in your calendar. There are many, many other benefits as well. Of course, there is a cost to maintaining your calendar at this level, but I've found the investment to be more than worth it. So again, just to reiterate, keeping it simple here, work, study, and personal time should be scheduled in your calendar with a clear start and end point for each. You should know when you're scheduled to begin your personal time. You should know when you are scheduled to end your personal time and either go back to work or move on to whatever the next commitment is, okay? So this is very related to working smart. Perhaps obviously, you want to be clear on what your priorities are, who are the important relationships to you, what opportunities you're going to invest in, and what opportunities you're going to pass on. In general, we'll do better, all of us, with fewer commitments that we can devote more energy to. That's not always possible, and it's not 100% true, but by and large, I think you'll find it to be true. That's why we led off with priorities and goals in this particular lesson. These lists make it easier to know what to say yes to and what to say no to, which is the fundamental skill of managing your time. And that is in turn the fundamental skill of working long hours. It's also related to working hard. Keeping commitments with other people that they know were difficult for us to keep creates the most trust and the best foundation for future growth. This is true in virtually all relationships. Keeping tough commitments is super powerful and generally really matters to people. This can also really help you develop confidence and pride in yourself if you feel like you're lacking those in any way. It might not be the complete answer to it, but it's very unlikely to hurt. Keeping commitments to yourself should really help with pride and confidence. Now, one final point here is about recovery time. Obviously, recovery time is going to be different for everyone, but the point is that it should be in your calendar and it should be adhered to with the same level of commitment as work and personal time. I think culturally, we don't always have the best relationship to that, and I think it's time for all of us as business people and business leaders, if you will, to role model that, starting with us. The most restful and enjoyable your recovery time is, the more restful and enjoyable your recovery time is, usually the better you're going to perform in the other areas. Ideally, it's enjoyable, and ideally, you change it over time as needed. And if you want help establishing a good routine, given that your commitments are probably going to be much, much bigger than the average business person, if you're on this path, then check out our episode on balance for high performers. It's called How to Stay Balanced When Studying for the GMAT Focus Edition, and it should be linked in the description of this content. I put a lot of time into that because it's actually a really important topic I address with many, many, many of my clients every single year. Because most of us on this path, the reason we're on this path in the first place is we really value big achievements for whatever reason. And again, no judgment on that, whatever your motivations are. But what that creates is it's even more challenging for us to create balance in our life because a lot of the messaging around balance that's meant for like the normal population is just like isn't going to work for you and me. So we need a better system. We need a different system that's more optimized for us and a better mindset around it, honestly. So that's there for you in that episode if you want help with that and if that resonates. If not, I'll move on. Okay. The first aspect of working long and working longer hours is having a list of priorities and goals. And the second aspect of it is making sure your work, personal, and study time is scheduled with clear start and end times in whatever calendar system you use. That's it so far. The third aspect of working long hours is having a record of what you spent time on every day. So I recommend having a record of how much time you spent on each thing at the end of every day. So this is going to be different than just the calendar because as many of you know, what is scheduled on the calendar is not always exactly how the time gets spent. So we want both. This is important. And I'll drive this home, hopefully with an example from my own experience in a moment. But if you want a useful tool for logging the time you spend on different things, I've found a software to be quite useful. It's called Toggl, Toggl. I believe it's free. I think there are like paid tiers, but I think I just use the free tier if I'm not mistaken. And it has all the functionality that I need on the free tier. So Toggl, Toggl. I believe it's an intentionally misspelled word. App names are I find them funny. Anyway, quite useful. Let's talk about why this is valuable and important. As humans, we tend to not be the best at estimating how long things take, and also not be the best at estimating exactly how long we spent on something. There's actually plenty of psychological studies and double-blind studies, evidence that demonstrates this. Without tracking, it makes it difficult to know where our time is actually going versus our estimate, which may or may not be accurate. This is just as important for your personal commitments as your professional commitments. And you don't need to track how much time you spend with all your friends and all your personal relationships, okay? But it should ideally be in your calendar, and there should be a clear start and end time, and you should have a rough idea at least of how much time during the week, let's say, is going to personal versus work versus study versus other commitments. It doesn't mean you don't improvise sometimes, and it doesn't mean you're not spontaneous. It doesn't mean you're like sucking the joy out of life. That's not the point here. In fact, we want the opposite of that, ideally. It just means that you have a plan and you're aware of what will happen if you deviate from that plan. And the way you can create better awareness around that over time is you schedule everything, like I said, and then you have a time tracker so that you have a record of, okay, how much time was planned versus how much time did I actually do? Was it more? Was it less? How much more? How much less? That will really, really help out with becoming a better decision maker over time, which for most of us on this MBA path, that's the role that we're headed toward is decision making. Jeff Bezos, just to kind of add some color to this, famously has quote unquote messy meetings. So the meeting times are scheduled, but within that scheduled time, there's like a lot of chaos and disagreement and like lack of structure sometimes. So I'm not saying that what you do during your scheduled time has to be like clean and predictable. I'm just saying you want to have a plan and you want to be aware of what will happen if you deviate from that plan. That awareness is what will help you become a better decision maker over time. What did I plan? What did I do? What did I plan? What did I do? I think that's what being good at managing time means. If you don't have a plan or you're not aware what will happen if you deviate from that plan, then you'll usually have a hard time controlling your time. And if you have a hard time controlling your time, you'll usually have a hard time controlling your results. Again, this might not be for everyone. This is just what I've seen work for the widest variety and number of people. The more aware you are of what you're investing your time in, the easier it is to allocate or reallocate your time when you realize you're not investing it in things that matter to you. So bringing this back to working longer on the things that matter. Think about financial tracking software if you've ever used that. Sometimes we just forget that we signed up for a subscription, or we miscalculated how much we spent on food or social, or how much we spent on travel. And then all of a sudden, there's the charge in my financial logging software, and it's like, oh, can't hide from that. And it's pretty tough to add everything up to the decimal over a month in your head. If you have that skill, that's amazing. I definitely don't. That's why I use financial tracking software as religiously as I can. This is partly why that kind of software tracking is valuable, because it can help you make better financial decisions. And all I'm recommending is that you do the same thing for your time. This will help you allocate more time to things that matter to you, which really is what working longer is all about. So far, we've covered some basics of working long hours, knowing your priorities, knowing your goals, scheduling your time, and tracking what you spend your time on. All super simple, but super powerful, okay? The final aspect of working long hours is more of a mindset shift. And the way I like to think about it is letting go of working only when conditions are perfect. Obviously, as stated in the Working Smarter segment, you want to work as much as you can during your ideal times. But I don't recommend expecting that the bulk of your study time is going to be during those high energy, high focus times. For most of us, we'll be able to get maybe 20% of our study time during those high energy, low distraction, ideal times. If you can get more than that, that's awesome. It'll definitely benefit you. And I recommended doing that in part one of this series. But just bringing this full circle is totally fine if that's like 2% of your study time. Realistically, I've observed for most of us, about 80% of our study time will not be ideal. You'll be tired, you'll be distracted, you'll get interrupted for one reason or another. Like all that stuff is maybe even probably going to be the bulk of the time that you have to actually study. So what can help in these situations is letting go of the fact that it's not perfect. And reframing, this is the tool that I'm going to use for this, that I use all the time. I'm going to recommend you use it as well, or at least try it. Reframing any counterproductive thoughts that come up when conditions are not ideal. Quick example of this. Let's say you're in a distracted environment and you start thinking, okay, I'm in this distracted environment, so I'm not really feeling good about the progress I'm making right now. It's a very common thought, and it's really just a statement of fact. The key is, what is the next thought after that? And I think it's quite valuable to create some awareness around that. If the next thought is, therefore, I should stop studying, then that is going to make it much harder and much less likely that you're going to work longer hours. Instead, you might want to consider reframing the circumstances. I'm in a distracted environment, so I'm not feeling good about about the progress I'm making. What you could do is you can reframe the next thought to be, therefore, I must be building my skills of working smarter, harder, and longer because I'm facing resistance and I'm challenging myself to continue to make progress until my scheduled study time is over. This is what's in the calendar. I didn't hit my logged time yesterday. I've got a record of how I was only 80% on my planned study time. So today I'm going for 100. Or maybe today you just go for 81 and try to make that incremental progress. But the idea is, like, the facts have not changed. Like, I think reframing thoughts sometimes gets like a bad rap because you're kind of like divorcing yourself from reality. And I do think some people actually recommend that. And I definitely do not recommend that. I recommend actually reframing in a way that connects you more to reality. So I'll talk about that more in a second. Clearly, there are limits to how far reframing our thinking are going to take us. But that doesn't mean that there's zero value in it. Many times our thinking governs our actions, such as therefore I should stop studying. Like, I'm much more likely to take the action of stopping studying, which probably is not going to help me get closer to my GMAT goal, unless, of course, it's conflicting with another priority. That brings us back to the top of the lesson. But let's say this is planned study time and it's not conflicting with any of your other priorities, and you're in a distracted environment. I think it's good to reframe any potentially negative thoughts, or let's call them counterproductive thoughts, rather than like labeling it with negative or positive, just counterproductive. It's taking you further from your goal instead of getting you closer to your goal, and replacing that with a thought that's closer to reality. I can challenge myself to work longer, smarter, and harder because I'm in a distracted environment. Now you're turning the distracted environment into something that can help you rather than an obstacle. Again, obviously there are limits to this, and I don't recommend divorcing yourself from reality. In fact, I recommend the opposite. Again, more on that in a moment. So this might be a little much for some of you, and this part of the episode might already be getting too weird. I might have gotten too weird for you 20 minutes ago, and I apologize if that's the case. That's not my intention to be too weird. My intention to be is to be as real as possible with you, irrespective of whatever might be socially acceptable here, and to get you results. That's my goal. So what I've found particularly helpful is keeping a spreadsheet of these counterproductive thoughts and the reframes that I've created that resonate with me most. Again, no need to do this. If this is getting like too weird for you, don't worry about it. I will move on to the next topic in a moment. But for those of you who are like, yeah, I want the spreadsheet of my counterproductive thoughts on the reframes, that's going to help me a lot. Great. So another example, I really don't feel like studying right now. That's just a statement of fact. I don't naturally feel the emotions and the energy that I want to feel that would make me want to study right now. And for me personally, that used to lead to, therefore, I should reschedule my study time to a time that's more convenient, or that I'm going to have more energy. Okay, so I actually was not good at studying when conditions were not ideal. That led to me not studying long, which really hurt my speed of results. Inherently, there is no problem with rescheduling things, actually. So that's an important point, because many times it's actually the right decision. And that's particularly true if you have conflicting priorities. But what I'll share with you is, by tracking my actual time when I would push through that resistance and keep my commitment to myself and just study for the duration of my planned time, versus when I would reschedule to make it quote unquote easier, my tracked time, I actually ended up studying 30% less time overall, if I compared that. So I would track the time. If I rescheduled it for whatever reason, sometimes it was multiple reasons or varied reasons, I would just end up at the end of the week with 30% less study time, versus the times when I just said, hey, I scheduled this. There's no other priorities conflicting with this. I don't feel like studying, but I'm just going to force it, for lack of a better word. I just force myself to sit here and go through the motions. Okay, that was the gap between my perception and my reality. I felt much better about rescheduling, but my actual data was much weaker, 30% weaker. So I probably wouldn't have discovered that without tracking. So my new thought became every time I reschedule, I end up studying 30% less and feeling guilty, which was true. That was a true statement of fact after I made that realization. So I'd rather just push through this discomfort and this distraction or this fatigue, whatever the case was, and be more productive at the end of the week. And at the end of the week, I always felt much better. So like in the moment, I didn't feel as good, but long term, I felt much, much better. And there was like a compounding effect on that over time. So with this reframing process, what our goal is to move ourselves from a distorted belief by scheduling and tracking our data of how we're spending our time to a more accurate belief. It's a very simple process, but again, we're connecting more with reality. We're not separating ourselves from reality, which is like how the whole, I think, concept of mental reframing kind of got a bad rap. It just got like a little abused or something, or just used by people who had some weird ulterior motives. I don't know. Sorry, I should be less judgmental on that. They had ulterior motives that I don't personally understand. Let's put it that way. The above tactics I recommended regarding the priority list, the calendar, and time tracking should really, really help with more accurate reframes and just connecting you more to the reality of how are you spending your time and are you actually studying longer or working longer, whatever your goal is, on a regular basis. Now, even if you don't want to track, it's just really helpful to simply be okay with the fact that conditions may be imperfect 80% of the time and that you can still get great results despite that. In fact, sometimes you might get an even better result when conditions aren't ideal. Some of you are like the work better under pressure type people. I think that's a reasonable example of how you might get a better performance even if you are in a distracted or high pressure or stressful or whatever, short on time type of environment. Of course, just to repeat, do your best to optimize your environment and your time management, like we spoke about. But remember, even a study session at 10% of your ideal capacity is better than no study at all. You will definitely make more progress studying at 10% of your ideal capacity than you will not studying. That is virtually guaranteeable. So I strongly recommend just finding a way to get your time in and make it the best it can be given the current circumstances and your current resources. It doesn't have to be perfect for you to hit your goal. At the same time, please don't cheat your recovery time. That's why I led off with priorities, goals, and the calendar. That's got to come first, in my experience. For high achievers, you've got to set that part up before you just start like hitting the gas with this. Otherwise, it's just super, super easy to burn yourself out, which is extremely counterproductive. Now, instead of you being your best friend and like your own personal coach through this process, now you're like your worst enemy. You're working against yourself. We don't want that. I'm not saying any of this is easy, but it is doable. And you might have to fail a couple times, or you might have to endure a few moments of weakness. And I've probably said this on the pod in the past, but just in case I haven't, like having a moment of weakness does not make you a weak person. Continuing to be weak over and over and over and over again, even though you could have changed, that's different. But having some moments of weakness that you then like learn from and improve from, that's the opposite of being a weak person. Okay. So just an important distinction there. Now, being responsible means working the right amount and resting the right amount. That balance is going to be different for almost everyone. So if you don't have a good system for that yet, again, I highly recommend the Balance for High Performers episode linked below. This brings us full circle. It brings us full circle to working hard. Even if the situations aren't ideal, it's super helpful to be able to make progress. You might not feel like working. You might be in a distracted environment and you might be working at a time that you're just not at your best. If you committed, I highly recommend that you work anyway, as long as it's not conflicting with your other priorities. You might surprise yourself with how much you can accomplish even when you're at 50 or 80% of your ideal. That is it. If you are always working on the things that matter and you work on them whether you feel like working on them or not, and you work on them for a long time without hurting your other priorities too much, it's really, really hard to fail. It's also worth mentioning that all these things are totally free. They don't require a financial investment to utilize or improve. And further, they map to virtually any situation. So they have a near infinite ROI if you can improve them. That's why I wanted to talk to you about these things. I hope that helps. I gave you some advice that's helped me and my clients be better at studying and working smarter, harder, and longer. We're all interested to hear what works for you personally, so reach out anytime and let us know how it's going. If you have questions, if you're not sure how to apply any of this for your specific situation, you can reach us at the GMAT Strategy on current social channels, or you can email us at contact, C-O-N-T-A-C-T, at thegmatstrategy.com. Just in case it's not obvious, we care, we like hearing from you, and we enjoy helping out as much as we possibly can. As always, my greatest hope is that this material will make your studies as easy and as painless as they can possibly be. If you want more tips and strategies for optimizing your performance, please head to our website, thegmatstrategy.com, which is linked in the description of this content, and check out our free video on how you can reach your dream GMAT score in half the normal time. In the meantime, this is a regular show, so please subscribe and please stay positive and stay consistent with your studies. Talk to you all soon.